Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joanne. Look, there's a few stories at the moment that are really starting to hit the news, and this is a big one as far as Australia is concerned. So let me just get this so that it goes that. So the story is that Brian Houston has stepped down from Hillsong ahead of a court hearing over the concealment of alleged child thing, those things. This has all come about from the Royal Commission a few years ago, was it 2015, where institutions that dealt with children were examined for how they handled offences against children. And so I just want to preface it by saying that this just didn't involve the church. It involved all child organisations, and most child organisations, government, private, religious, at some point or at some point in time have all failed our children. But this was probably a big revelation at the time, what came out of this. So let's have a look at what's happened here. So Hillsong founder Brian Houston has stepped down as leader of the church while he defends a criminal charge alleging he covered up his father's CSA. The founder of the Christian church made the announcement on Sunday after last year stepping aside as director of all Hillsong boards. He was charged in October last year with one count of concealing the serious indictable offence of another person and says he intends to vigorously defend the charge. In a statement on the church's website, he said the charges were unexpected and the allegation had failed to disclose information about his father had come as a shock. Frank Houston, who died in 2004, is accused of the alleged abuse of a young man back in the 1970s. Mr. Houston also said his latest decision came after discussions with the board last month. In December, the board said in December during the board meeting, Hillsong external legal counsel gave the board advice regarding the current charge I am facing. Mr. Houston said that it would be best practice for me to step aside completely from church leadership during the court proceedings. The court proceedings are likely to be drawn out and take up most of 2022, especially considering the backlog in the courts exacerbated by the COVID pandemic. The 67-year-old, who is due to appear before a Sydney court in October, said his emotional well-being was also a factor. We have talked about the effects of this situation with my father, which go back many years up to the current legal system and the impact he's had on me emotionally. Mr. Houston said he will use the time to work with his legal team to set the record straight. Police previously have alleged their investigation into Mr. Houston began in 2019. The Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child SA had Frank Houston admitted to the abuse which took place in Australia and New Zealand. He was allowed to retire from the church before the abuse became public. Now, the backstory for that was that Brian was the head of the Council of Churches at the time, so they allowed him to retire. There's also allegations of money being paid to the alleged victim. So this has all come out in 2019. I said 2015, but 2019 for the institutionalised child in the Royal Commission. So he stepped aside to defend the charge. He admitted some things in the Royal Commission, which is how the charges have come about. It's going to be very interesting to see how it played out, because I'm certain that there are other people that they also will want to look at. I mean, George Pell was charged was something similar as well initially, for turning the blind eye for what happened. I mean, he eventually did get off, and now back in the Vatican. And so that's been a cause of conjecture as well. The other thing that I think should be stated is that Brian Houston is the Prime Minister's spiritual mentor. The Prime Minister goes to the Hillsong Church in Sydney. Not that that has any effect on the legal system, they're completely separate. But, and a lot of the federal ministers of Parliament also attend the same church. It's going to be very interesting to see how this is dealt with politically because of this fact. Now, as I said, in 2019, or with the Royal Commission, a lot of organisations, government, independent religious organisations, it was deemed that they failed children one way or the other. You know, I would also like to state that just because there are bad apples doesn't make everybody bad and corrupt. There are some good people in there. So just because there are some bad apples, so I'm a member of the Salvation Army. The Salvation Army has had some people charged for some horrific stuff, but that doesn't mean that we're all bad. It means that there's one or two bad people. It's the same with, you know, Catholic Church. Not all the Catholic priests are horrible or bad or, you know, guilty of CSA. They're under the microscope as well. You know, it doesn't mean that everybody is bad. When we have teachers that do bad things, it doesn't mean that all teachers are bad. They all need to be done. And now we are all mandated reporters. Anybody that works with children is now a mandated reporter, and we have to actually mandate a report stuff if we see anything even suspicious with somebody else working with children. We have to report it. So they've really cracked down on interaction with children, even from us, you know, in every way. And as they should. I sort of joke to say they've gone the other way. It's really hard now to work with children because of all the restrictions and everything like that. You know, you can't be left alone with a child. You can't be left, you know, if you can't just go pick somebody up anymore. You actually have to have somebody else in the car. There has to be always two people if you're talking to a child. You know, so it's all that sort of stuff, you know. You're not allowed to hug them, but they, of course, don't want to hug you, and it's always really difficult. So it's all of this stuff has come out of the Royal Commission. So the Royal Commission did disclose some really horrific stuff that's happened in the past, and however, there has been some good in it, where children now are really top priority and doing everything that they can to protect them. Anyway, I just want to give you that update. But yeah, tell me what you think. But as I said, there's lots of allegations that came out. There was the alleged victim of Frank Houston talked about in the Royal Commission, talked about being paid off, being offered money to be quiet or hush money. So I don't think we've heard the end of it. So, and from my memory, from my recollection, Brian Houston did say in the Royal Commission that he knew about it but did nothing, and that's where I think the charges stem from. But whether what you say in the Royal Commission is privilege or not, I guess is I don't know. But anyway, that's where we are. So Brian Houston has stepped aside from leadership of Hillsong. He's not on any of the boards, and he's going to fight his charges, as you do, as you have a right to. I have no doubt that if he's found guilty, there'll be an appeal, as is his right. You know, we just let the legal system do their stuff and see what happens. But I'll be very interested to hear or see what the government says or does about it, because, as I said, there's a very close connection between the Prime Minister and Brian Houston and the Hillsong Church. So we'll get to see what's going to happen there. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.